Alright, so let's go ahead and look at practice problem number 1. Jacqueline travels in her car from Houston to Dallas, a 295-mile trip. The data for the trip is shown below. So we have two things here. We have distance traveled and elapsed time. So before we begin, I want you to think about which one's going to be your x and which one's going to be your y. Let's think about this, right? One of these has to change, and then we measure the other one. So I'm going to pause the video. Tell me, if I change the distance traveled, would it make sense to record elapsed time? Or should I wait for elapsed time to happen and then measure how much distance is traveled? Okay. You should have said that elapsed time is what's going to change and distance traveled is what you measure. Okay? Another way you could look at it is miles per hour, right? When we do miles per hour, remember in math, the y goes on top and the x goes on bottom. So you would say miles per hour, or y over x. So miles would be the y, hour would be the x. Okay? It would make sense, right? As time goes on, distance traveled will change and we'll see how far they went. So just because it's like this doesn't mean this is the x and this is the y. Okay? Just because that says x doesn't mean this is the x, right? X is just representing the distance traveled. So let's go ahead and graph this using 8 steps. Okay. First of all, we need to do what? Graph paper and ruler. Check. Okay. Identify the appropriate axis for each variable. We just talked about that. Your paper is probably like this. I'm going to rotate it just so we have some more writing room on the sides, okay? So, I don't have a ruler with me right now, so I'm just going to draw it by hand. I'm going to go ahead and draw my x and my y axis. Okay? Alright. So, my y-axis, this is my y. I'm going to put distance traveled. Okay, and our units is miles. Always put your units. Next, my x-axis. We said it was going to be elapsed time. Right? And if we go back to this chart, it says hours. So I'm going to put hours. So next, I have to go ahead and pick a variable range. Okay? So let's see what makes sense. I'm going to do the x first. Okay? Look at the way it's jumping. It goes all the way to about 300, and it skips about maybe 20 each time, 20 to 30. So I think counting by 25 would make sense. Now if I put 25, remember this is my y, let me label this. This is going to be my y-axis. So y-axis, this is my x-axis. Okay, so if I go ahead and change this by 20, let's do 25 each time. Right, if I just do 25, 50, 75, 100, 125, 150. Everything's just going to be smushed together, right? So I'm going to go ahead and space this out, okay? I'm going to space it out. So instead of just doing 25, 50, I'm going to maybe jump every 2, okay? So it's going to be 25. So every 2, 50, 1, 2, 75, 1, 2, 100, 1, 2, 125, 1, 2, 150, 1, 2, 175, and I'm just going to keep going all the way to 300, okay? Okay, I stopped at 300 because this stops at about 300, but you can keep going if you want. Up to you. Okay. Alright, so now we're done with the y-axis. Let's go ahead and do the x-axis. Okay. Now let's look at this. These are small decimal points, right? So I can't jump by 25 anymore, right? What do you think you should jump by? So you go ahead and pause the video and think about what you want to choose.